Hi guys, Olive here today with the next video in my ongoing Trash My Bookshelves fiction unhauling project. We're pretty deep into this project by this point, so I'm only going to give a very short introduction to the project in general, just for any of you who might be new around here or maybe haven't seen any of my previous videos about this. But if you would like more information about this project, I do highly recommend you check out the playlist that I've created that houses all of the videos that I've made up to this point and will contain all of the videos I make in the future relating to this project. That playlist will be linked for you down below. If you want to check it out, you can hear a little bit more about what inspired this project. But in the most general sense, what I'm trying to do right now is weed out books from my unread fiction collection that either used to live or still currently live on this far bookshelf behind me. I'm trying to figure out which ones I want to keep, which ones I want to get rid of, and I'm using your feedback to help me along. For each shelf, I make two different videos. In the first video, I show you all of the books that were on that shelf, and then I give you a few weeks' time to give me all of your feedback in the comment section. And then I use my own feelings about the books and your feedback to help me make decisions. Well, inevitably, there are a handful of books at the end of that process that I just can't figure out how I feel about. Either opinions in my comment section were mixed, or I'm still on the fence for whatever reason. There are always a few books that I feel like I need to read a little bit from in order to make my final solid decisions about the books. So in the second video for each shelf, I do a try a chapter tag where I read 20 to 25 pages from a maximum of 5 books that I just can't make my mind up about. And then at the end of that video, I finalize my decisions. Today's video is going to be the first video for shelf number 4 out of the total 5. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you all of the books that used to sit on shelf number 4. Whether or not they will return to those shelves is largely based on your feedback, which is why at this juncture, I need to urge you to please leave me your comments in the comment section if you have even slight feelings about any of the books that you are about to see. So much of this project comes down to how you all are feeling about these books. I haven't read them. I need your insights. I need your knowledge. So if you have any feelings about these books, even if you're normally a lurker, even if commenting normally isn't your thing, I ask you to just make a small exception for this video, and please let me know what you think in the comment section. It helps me more than you could possibly realize. I've been speaking very quickly in this video because I know we need to get started, not just because I know you want to see the books. I'm assuming that's why you came to this video in the first place, but also because I counted and there were 40 books on shelf number 4. All of them are paperbacks and they're smaller paperbacks, so a whole lot more of them fit onto one shelf, but that means that there are 40 books that I need to show you in this video. So let's get started. Okay, starting off, we have an Oprah book. This is Behold the Dreamers by Mbolo Mbue. This book follows the family of a man who works as a chauffeur for an executive at Lehman Brothers around the time of the financial crisis. Again, this was an Oprah book, so this book was everywhere for a period of time, and it's always struck me as something that I would really enjoy, if only just because I've worked in finance, so I'm really interested in that element of it, but it also seems like it's just really a good book. I know a lot of people have really enjoyed it. So please let me know in the comments. I'm assuming a lot of you have read this one because it was so popular for a period of time. Let me know if I'm right in my assumption that this is something I would really like. Okay, this next one was another huge one when it was released, and then for a period of time afterward because this book was also an award winner. But this one, I have a whole lot less confidence that I'm going to like it because I just don't think it's my kind of thing. This is Lincoln and the Bardo by George Saunders. This book takes place in this supernatural realm. President Abraham Lincoln, who has recently lost his young son, is making a series of visits to the crypt where his son was laid to rest because he wants to visit with the spirit of his son. I tried to read this a couple of years back. It was on my TBR around the spooky season because it seemed appropriate for that, and I just couldn't get into this. I can't even really tell you why because it was so long ago, but there's just something about it that didn't click with me. I don't think I fully understood what was going on, to be honest. I have no shame in admitting that. I don't know what was going on, and I just, I really want to try this again because everyone says that it's so good. But I'm just getting the feeling more and more like this isn't my kind of thing. And I don't want to force myself to read something because everybody else thinks it's really good. There are so many books out there. There are so many books just behind me that I know are going to be more of my kind of thing, that I would really enjoy reading a whole lot more than this. So I'm leaning toward no. But those of you who know anything about my taste in fiction, if you think that if I push through the early pages, if you think there's something in this book that I would connect with, I'm willing to change my mind. Yet another very popular book that I know a lot of people love, and one that I've actually tried to pick up before, wouldn't you know it, is Possession by A.S. Byatt. This book follows a pair of scholars who are researching two different Victorian era poets. And I have tried to read this one before. I read the very early pages when I checked a copy of this out from the library long before I was on BookTube. I had been hearing about this book everywhere. It sounded like something I would like. But those early pages were rather slow. And I also get rather intimidated when I check out really big books. From the library, I start to feel this pressure of getting them done so I can return the book so the next person can enjoy it. And then weirdly enough, I don't read the book at all because I'm too intimidated, because I feel the pressure too much, because that makes a whole lot of sense. Whether it makes sense or not, it's something that I've noticed that I do. So when it comes to really big books, I try to either read them on ebook because it's a little bit less intimidating that way if I check the ebook out from the library, or I just go ahead and get myself a used copy like I did in this case. I do think I want to go back to this, but I'm just not 100% sure. So please let me know what you think. Okay, this next one I know I'm keeping because it's one of my late to the party books that I feel like everybody else has read but me, so I feel like I really need to get to them. This is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This book follows a family living in Ohio in the 1970s. Their daughter took her own life, and they're trying to figure out why. I do know I want to read this one because I feel like everyone else has read it, but also I feel like I need to read this because I need to make a determination once and for all on whether or not Celeste Ng's books are for me. I did read Little Fires Everywhere, and I thought it was just fine. I didn't really see what everyone loved about it, especially because I found that in that book, she really likes to kind of hammer the point she's trying to make directly into your head. Like, there's very little room for interpretation, and I don't like books like that. I like books that have more nuance to them. And based on things that I've heard, it seems like this one is similar, but I feel like this one is so short, it's something I could read in one afternoon, and then I'll know once and for all whether or not Celeste Ng's books are for me. So I am going to keep this one, but let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. Do you like her books? I just don't know if I do. Okay, this next book. I have a story about, not necessarily this book, but about this author. It's a very interesting one. This is The Emperor's Children by Claire Massoud. And this specific book, it's about a group of 3 friends who are just under 30. I suspect that I was just under 30 when I picked this book up, hence why it appealed at the time and still does appeal. I love reading books about friendships, and I'm not too far distant from the age of 30. I'm just over 30 right now. So I do still want to read this one, but especially because this author really intrigues me. And she has ever since I heard this story within the book world a few years back. I forget whether or not I was on BookTube at the time, but I know it was fairly recent, like within the past decade. This author, Claire Massoud, was being interviewed by someone from Publishers Weekly around the time her newest novel at the time, The Woman Upstairs, was coming out. And the person who was interviewing her asked her something asinine, like, would you want to be friends with the main character of this book? She seems really miserable. She doesn't seem like she's very likable. And Claire Massoud went off on her. Claire Massoud asked this interviewer in return, would you want to be friends with Humbert Humbert? Why is it an expectation of a character, especially a female character, that she be likable, relatable, someone worth rooting for in order for her to be worth reading about? And I couldn't agree more. Especially since becoming a freelance book reviewer, I find myself mentally coming back to her answer to that question over and over again. I read it quite frequently because I think she brings up really excellent points, and it has made me look at the way that I look critically at the books that I'm reviewing. I think her answer to that question made me a better reviewer, and that obviously makes me want to pick up her books. Okay, this next one I know for a fact I'm keeping, but I'll show it to you anyway. This is The Lake of Dead Languages by Carol Goodman. This book is very much in the style of The Secret History by Donna Tartt. You have that classic boarding school plus a bad thing that happened formula going on in here. And when I did my Secret History-esque book recommendations video a very long time ago, I remember that so many people were in the comment section talking about this book as another book to add to that list. And ever since, I've wanted to read it. So this one's going to stay around. Got a couple more campus novels here to show you. The first one is a more recent acquisition. This is Rookery Blues by John Hassler. This one takes place in the 1960s. There are 5 different music students, and there's also a teacher strike going on at this school. Again, I got this one fairly recently, relatively recently, so it's not necessarily what I'm looking to get rid of. And the other campus novel from shelf number 4 that I wanted to show you is called The Zero and the One by Ryan Ruby. This one also has a classic secret history-esque setup. There is a young scholarship student attending Oxford, and he meets another student, a young man, a very rich young man, who introduces this scholarship student to a new and dangerous world. I am open to keeping this one because I do like campus novels. Despite the outcome of the previous Try a Chapter tag, I can assure you, I do actually like campus novels. So I'll be looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this one so I can know whether or not it's worth my time. Okay, this next book. I will admit that I picked up this book almost exclusively because of BookTube hype. Don't let the tough exterior fool you. Don't let the fact that I am also a booktuber fool you. I am also susceptible to BookTube hype. It gets to all of us. I promise you, you're not alone in that. But I remember a few years back, everyone was talking about the book Arcadia by Ian Pearce. I don't think I heard one negative review about that book. And so when I saw a different one of his books, Stones Fall, at a library book sale, I decided to pick it up because this was a very hyped up author. This book is about a financier, and there's a mystery surrounding whether or not he took his own life. He fell from a building. Was it an accident? Was it intentional? That's the mystery within this book. And I can't say that I'm as excited to pick up this book now, a few years after the hype has passed, but let me know if you think it's good. I'll read it if you do. This next one is another late to the party pick. I put it on that list, so I know I'm keeping it. It's The Fair Fight by Anna Freeman. This is about a female boxer in the 18th century. And even though this is a backlist book, I still see people picking this one up and raving about it. I think it's that good. So I know it's worth my time. I know I want to read it. I'm definitely going to keep it. But if you want to tell me in the comments how you felt about it, I would love to know. Okay, the fact that I even own this book, I feel like is a symptom, maybe even a drawback of having a memory like I do, because I know for a fact that the only reason I picked up a used copy of I, Elizabeth by Rosalind Miles is because I remember I went to high school with a girl who was obsessed with this book. And I guess the books at the book sales I go to are just that cheap that that's all I need as a recommendation to pick up a book. This is obviously a novelization of the life of England's Queen Elizabeth I. And I know a lot of people are into the Tudors, but it's just never really been my kind of thing. I've never felt particularly inspired to pick up Hilary Mantel's trilogy, for instance. Maybe I'll get there someday. Maybe I'll have an interest in the Tudors someday, but as of right now, I don't. So unless I hear amazing things from all of you about this book, I think I'm going to let it go. Okay, these next 2 books are both by Meg Wolitzer, so I know I'm keeping them because I want to read all of Meg Wolitzer's books. She has a pretty substantial back catalog that I've been very slowly, too slowly, trying to work my way through. So this first one is called The 10-Year Nap. This is about a group of 4 friends in New York City, and they all decide to take 10-year breaks from their established careers to be stay-at-home moms, to stay at home and raise their children. Well, 10 years later, the children are a little bit older. The children don't need them as much anymore. So it seems like all 4 of them are trying to determine what's next for them. I'm particularly excited about this one because there's a group of friends in this book, which means that we might get some nice group scenes when all the friends are together together. The way that Meg Wolitzer writes group dynamics is something really, really special I've noticed about her books. I really love how zippy everything is. There's just an electricity when she writes about a group of friends or just a group of people in general. So this may very well be the next Meg Wolitzer book I pick up. And the other Meg Wolitzer that was on the fourth shelf is called Surrender Dorothy. This is about a 30-year-old woman who experiences grief for the very first time. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to pick this one up, but I know I will eventually because it's Meg Wolitzer. Okay, this next one I think I also picked up because of BookTube, maybe back in 2014, 2015. I've had it for quite a while. This is Elijah's Mermaid by Essie Fox. This is a gothic Victorian novel in which a child is rescued from drowning in the Thames, and then that child goes on to be raised in a brothel. It sounds like something I would enjoy, but who knows? Okay, next up is Swimmer Among the Stars by Kanishk Tharoor. This is a short story collection. It actually seems to be a fantasy short story collection. And I've mentioned in previous videos for this project how I feel about short story collections and how I feel about SFF books. I don't want to keep many of either because I just don't reach for them very much. And so because this one has elements of both, I'm doubly unsure about this one, but I do remember hearing really good things about it. So if you've read it, please let me know if you think it's worth keeping. Okay, this next one I picked up relatively recently. I've had it on my TBR for a long time, but I only fairly recently got my own used copy of it. It's called Nights at the Circus by Angela Carter. This book takes place at a circus. It's about an aerialist in that circus. She's half woman, half swan. And then there's a journalist who joins the circus just to get closer to her. I'll be really curious to hear your thoughts on this one, even if I don't think I'm getting rid of it quite yet. Okay, this next book I know for a fact I'm keeping. It's the first book in a historical mystery series that I think I'm going to love. It's part of the reason why I haven't started it yet, is that I feel so confident I'm going to love it. Make that make sense. But this first book in the series is called A Curious Beginning by Deanna Rayburn. This series follows a woman by the name of Veronica Speedwell. This is the Veronica Speedwell series. She is a lady traveler. She's a natural historian. And in this first book, she is on the run from an elusive assailant. I really do think I'm going to love this series. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this series. Okay, this next book is another start of a series, but I am much less sure I want to keep this one around. This book is called Smiler's Fair by Rebecca Levine. This series is about the intertwining lives of 5 different people and the way their lives intertwine at this moving carnival called Smiler's Fair. This is a fantasy book, a fantasy series, and as I'm sure you've heard me say at some point in this project, I don't think I want a whole lot of fantasy books on my shelves because I just don't reach for them very much. And when I do, I prefer to read them on ebook. There's just really not a sense in keeping books around that I don't think I'm going to want to reread. So I don't know about this one. Let me know your thoughts and we'll go from there. I've got another fantasy book here, but this one came from a book subscription box. This is Midnight Never Come by Marie Brennan. This one takes place in an alternate version of Elizabethan England, so maybe a good follow-up to I, Elizabeth if I decide to keep that book around. This one I got in the book bath box that Winks from Winks and Ink used to curate, what feels like a lifetime ago. So I've had this one for quite a while, and I continue to be intrigued by it, not just because of the premise, but also because this author also wrote the Natural History of Dragons series. I forget the actual name of that series, like the Memoirs of Lady Trent or something like that. I really liked the first book in that series. I didn't care for the second book and I haven't continued with it, but I really, really liked that first book. So that gives me some hope that I might like this one, but let me know your thoughts. This next book I picked up because it was a recommendation from Erin Morgenstern, author of The Night Circus, one of my favorite fiction books. It wasn't like a personal recommendation to me. God, I wish it were. I would never stop bragging about that if I get a personal recommendation from Erin Morgenstern. But I remember hearing her talk about this book online, and that's why I added it to my TBR and later went on to get this copy. And she has a blurb on the cover. How perfect. This is called The Rathbones by Janice Clark, and this book tells the haunted history of the Wailing Rathbone clan. I think I still want to read this one. Okay, this next one, if I decide I don't want to read this one, I'm not going to sell it to my local used bookstore, as I know I will do for all of the rest of the ones I don't keep, because this book isn't actually mine. It's my husband's book that he's just allowing to live on my shelves because I haven't read it yet, and he would like me to. This is The Child Finder by Renee Denfeld. I read her first book, The Enchanted, and I loved it. I loved it so much that I recommended it to my husband, who went on to read it and also love it. And that's why he bought this book and read it with the urgency that he did. So now he wants me to read this one. And the reason why I picked up her first book, The Enchanted, in the first place is because I heard Erin Morgenstern recommend it, which is why I feel very confident that I still want to read The Rathbones. But the reason why I haven't rushed to pick this book up and then return it to my husband so he can do whatever he wants with it is because I remember hearing this one isn't quite as good, but if I'm misremembering that, please let me know. This next one I got on clearance at Barnes & Noble, and I will be honest that I picked this book up because I thought it was nonfiction. I thought this was a work of true crime. I think it was inspired by true events, which is probably what caused the mix-up. It's called Quiet Dell by Jane Ann Phillips. Look how small they write a novel. They're trying to deceive me. This book is about the murders of a mother and her 3 children in Chicago in the 1930s. Yeah, 1931. And then there's a journalist who is determined to figure out what happened. I don't remember hearing anyone really talking about this one, except for Sam Sachs, I guess, who has a blurb on the back. He says, "There is a glowing beauty to the book's brave, generous version of history," which seems like a sort of positive review. It seems like a lukewarm review that they took a nice snippet from. I know that they do that because they've done the same thing to my reviews. I've never met Sam, but we have mutual friends, so I think we know of each other. So if he thinks it's decent, maybe it's worth reading, but I'd love to know what you think. It seems like there were a lot of spooky looking books on shelf number 4 for whatever reason. This next one is a translated work, and it's called Embers by Sandor Morai. This is about the meeting of 2 men who haven't seen each other for 40 years because the last time they saw each other, there was some sort of an act of betrayal, but now they're meeting for the first time and it seems like they're going to rehash everything over dinner. This one seems spooky and atmospheric, so it definitely seems like something I would like, but then again, I am just not sure that I'm ever actually going to read this. This next book is another more recent acquisition, but unlike some other books on this shelf, I don't know if that fact will save it from The Purge, because I just don't know how I'm going to feel about this book. I don't have a lot of confidence in it. This book is called A Rumored Fortune by Joanna Davidson Politano. This book is set in the Victorian era, and there is a big fortune hidden somewhere on a vast estate, and there are a handful of people on the hunt for it. I just don't know about this one because I've heard exactly no one talk about it, and that makes me really nervous. Okay, next is Mad Miss Mimic by Sarah Henstra. This book is set in 1872, and there's a 17-year-old heiress who has some kind of a speech disorder that makes her stutter, but it also gives her the ability to perfectly mimic other people's voices. So there's that going on, and there's also some sort of drama with an opium gang. I don't know. This one sounds kind of confused, so it might go. This next book I remember picking up in Cleveland. I have good memories attached to this book already. That's a vote in this book's favor. This is called Liquor by Poppy Z. Bright. This is a foodie romp set in New Orleans. All things that I love reading about, so I'm pretty positive I'm going to keep this one, but do let me know what you thought of it if you've read it. Another foodie book. This is La Cucina by Lily Pryor. This book is set in Sicily, and we follow a middle-aged librarian who uses her cooking to express her passion for life. It sounds vaguely reminiscent of like Water for Chocolate, which is a book that I really loved. So I'm kind of still interested in this one, but then again, I'm kind of still on the fence. And speaking of Sicily, I also had a book on shelf number 4 called Sometimes the Soul, 2 novellas of Sicily by Gioia Timpanelli. Now, I haven't read a ton of novellas, but the ones that I have read have always kind of seemed like extended short stories, longer short stories. And I've already expressed how I feel about short stories, so I don't need to repeat myself. I don't think I'm going to keep this one. Unless there's really, really good feedback, I think I'll get rid of it. This is another one that I'm just not sure about. In fact, I think I'm going to get rid of it because I don't even know where I got it. I don't even remember that, to be honest with you, and that's not a good sign. It's called Sirius Blooms at Night by Shani Mutu. It's set on a fictional Caribbean island that I think is loosely based on Trinidad. It's the story of an old woman who is suspected of committing murder, and her story is told by a nurse at this place where she's being held. Again, unless there's a ton of positive feedback, I think I'm going to get rid of it. This next one is unfortunately another question mark. It's called An Atlas of Impossible Longing by Anuradha Roy. It's about the dramas of this family living in a big house on the outskirts of a small town in Bengal. Has anyone read this one? Do you think I would like it? Oh, this book. Okay, this is one I don't think I want. In fact, I'm pretty sure of it. But at least I remember what inspired me to pick up this book in the first place. That's more than I can say for some other books on this shelf. This is Stardust by Joseph Cannon. And the reason why I picked this up, I picked up a used copy of it, is that I had read another one of his books called Istanbul. That book was new, I think, around the time that I picked this book up. And for whatever reason, Istanbul really hit the spot at the time I read it. I read it before I joined BookTube. It was a mystery set in World War II. And this one is set in Hollywood in 1945. You can kind of get the idea that this author writes pretty exclusively about World War II. And at the time I read Istanbul, that wasn't really off-putting, but as time has gone on, there are just so many books about World War II that I really like to stay away from all of them. I know a lot of people like it. I'm not speaking negatively about it. It's just not my thing. So I don't feel the same inspiration to pick up this book anymore. So I think I'm first going to offer it to my mom, who loves reading about World War II. And if she doesn't want it, then I will sell this one. This next book I may end up keeping, even just for nostalgic reasons. This book is called Look at Me by Jennifer Egan. And this book is about a fashion model who gets into a horrific car accident, and she has to have several surgeries on her face because her face is so badly injured. But then when she gets back to New York City, she's basically unrecognizable, and she's really, really bitter about that. And the reason why I picked this book up in the first place is because I had read Jennifer Egan's book, A Visit from the Goon Squad, and I really liked it. I read that before BookTube as well. But the reason why I have some fond memories of this book is because, you don't know this, but I was considering using this book in my voiceover demo reel. I'll link that for you if you've never heard my reel before. It was really, really fun to make. And I was considering using this book. I actually recorded some things from this book. We ended up going in a different direction, but I have fond memories of it because I recorded snippets of this book in a voiceover booth. So I do actually think I want to read this one. I don't think I'm going to keep it around just because of that, but I will always have fond memories of this book because of that. This next book is another one I think I would really like to read, but we'll see depending on what you have to say about it. It's called Relief Map by Rosalie Knecht. This is about a pair of teenagers whose summer break is completely turned on its head because their town goes on lockdown due to a fugitive being on the loose in the hills nearby. And what initially attracted me to this book is that it says it's set in a Rust Belt town in Pennsylvania, which very likely means Western Pennsylvania, which perks my ears right up because I live in Pittsburgh. But also, I was really attracted to this book visually because I really like thistles. I think they're really beautiful for whatever reason, but that doesn't tell me anything about whether or not this book is actually good, so I'll need your help for that. Okay, this one, I truly have no idea if I want to read this one. It's called The House at the Edge of Night by Catherine Banner. Apparently, it's centered around this cafe on the coast of Italy. There's a marriage that's tested by indiscretion, but then again, it says that it spans nearly a century and it covers both world wars. So please let me know what you thought if you read this, because as of right now, I am 100% undecided about it. This next one was a gift, so I am inclined to keep it, but then again, I only want to keep it if I think I'm really going to enjoy it. It's called A Teaspoon of Earthen Sea by Dina Nayeri. It's about twin sisters growing up in Iran, and as they're growing up, they are just fascinated by America. So when one of the sisters and their mother goes missing, the twin who's left behind holds on to hope that they're still alive by convincing herself that they just went to America ahead of her and they're waiting for her there. This sounds very sad, but very beautiful. I think I might like to read it, but I need to hear your thoughts first. Okay, this next one is called The Tale of Ipi by Akwel Sapar. This book is about a group of Turkmen fishermen living on the coast of the Caspian Sea. And I'm somewhat ashamed to admit that I got this book from the publisher, Glagoslav. They offered it to me many years ago, and I've never gotten to it. And to be honest, I've never felt very inspired to pick it up. I just don't think it's my kind of thing. So I need to finally get rid of this one because I've only been keeping it out of guilt. I am sure there is someone out there who will like it a whole lot more than me. This next one I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep. It's called The Understory by Pamela Aarons. It's about an ex-lawyer whose life is dictated by ritual, and eventually he finds himself at a Buddhist monastery in Vermont. I can't really tell you what it is about this book, but for the longest time, I've had a feeling that I'm really going to like it. So unless there are really negative comments in the comment section that make me believe otherwise, I think I'm going to keep it. Whew, we are approaching the end here. There are only 3 books left. This next one I also got in a Book Riot quarterly box. Apparently I was not in the habit of reading the books that they sent. I think I just liked the bookish goodies. But this one I'm actually open to keeping. It's called Dryland by Sarah Jaffe. It is a coming-of-age novel set in 1992 Portland, and there's this 15-year-old girl who's thinking about joining the swim team because she thinks it'll help her feel closer to her older brother who just moved to Berlin, but it also might give her something to focus on so she can begin to let him go. It sounds really cute. I've been really liking coming-of-age novels, especially this year, so I actually think I just talked myself into keeping it. This next book, I am pretty positive I want to get rid of it. In fact, I think I'm fully positive I want to get rid of it. It's called The Coast of Akron by Adrienne Miller. It's about a dysfunctional family of artists, which sounded very appealing at the time. I love reading books about art and artists. But since picking this book up, very cheap used, like most of my books, I discovered that it has truly awful ratings. I probably should have checked that before I bought this book. So I don't know that there is anything that could convince me to read this, but you're welcome to let me know what you think. And then the final book from shelf number 4 that I need your opinions on is a book called Clade by James Bradley. This book is about 2 different partners. One is in England fighting a literal storm, and then the other is in Sydney, Australia, awaiting the results of a round of IVF. And it sounds like there's a pandemic going on. There are ramifications from climate change. It all sounds very stressful and a little bit too true to life. I'm not quite sure I need that in the books that I read. I experience enough of that in the real world. So I will probably end up getting rid of this one. So those were the 40 books that used to live on shelf number 4. I would really, really appreciate it if you could leave me any and all feedback down in the comment section below. I will be consulting your feedback over the next few weeks. I'll be using that to help me figure out which books I want to keep, which ones I want to get rid of, and whichever ones I am still undecided about after a few weeks' time, I will be back to read snippets of them and try a chapter tag. Thanks in advance for all of your help. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.